My name's David Guest. I've been running this business coaching practice for just over 15 years now. During that time, worked with thousands of businesses, business owners, understanding what the difference is between success and failure. You know, when I was younger, when I was a kid, my parents used to run their own business and I used to work for them when I was about 5. I don't know if anyone else has done this. 50 cents a day, tax-free, was pretty good in those days. But what happened is I started to realize that there's two different kinds of people that run businesses. There's people who run businesses and are just busy trying to make ends meet, and there's people who are building empires and making lots and lots of money. Now, they could be in the same industry, but what was the difference between those two people? Well, it started me on a journey, and my journey was to try and understand why people do things that they do. And so I started to realize there is a psychological difference between successful business owners and people that will struggle. So I wanted to touch a little bit on what that psychological difference might be. And it sort of comes down to something pretty simple. There's two kinds of people that we'll meet in this world that we live in, right? There's people who play this game of business above the line and people who play this game of business below this line. When we talk about below the line, here's probably the worst and the first, right? People who live in a total state of denial. Now, they're the people who think they're doing all right because they're busy. And you'll know those because when you ask them about how business is, they go, we're flat out. And when you ask them about, well, that must mean you're making money, they go, well, not quite yet. You know, we're in building mode. Or, you know, we're just trying to get to the sort of end of this phase. And they're literally living in denial. Now, if you think about what denial means, it just means lying to the one person on the planet you should never lie to, which is yourself. You know, because when we tell ourselves things are okay and they're not, what we're doing is we're putting our head in the sand. Now think about what happens when you put your head in the sand. Which part of your anatomy is sticking up, right? That's the bit that's going to get kicked by your competition, kicked by the economy, and just kicked by everything that's happening around you. So denial is probably one of the worst below the line behaviours that we have. The second one that we have is this one. People who have every excuse under the sun for why they're not successful in business. You know what? It's just not my fault. It's because I came from the wrong side of the tracks. It's because of the economy. It's because of those imports coming into the country. It's because my competitor opened next door. All we do is we come up with all of these excuses for why we're not going to be successful in business. Now, I suppose excuses is better than denial because at least now we're not sitting there thinking everything's going to be okay. At least now we actually know it's not going to be okay, but it's not our fault, right? The next one's that we're promoting up here. And the next step up, which is still in red, you'll notice because it's below the line, is blame. Now the blame game is so easy to do. And people do this all the time. It's not my fault. Can't find good help. You know, if only my customers didn't get in the way, I'd be able to run my business. And you start to listen to this sort of behaviour and you think to yourself, well, why do people like to blame other people? Why do people like to have excuses? Why do people like to live in denial? And it's pretty simple, right? The reason is because everyone likes to be one of these. They like to be a victim. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, because there is a reason people like to go this way. And there's an old saying that misery loves company. Now, what does that mean? It means that if I'm having a bad time, if I'm having a hard day, I can complain about it and people will feel sorry for me. Now, even though it doesn't sound like a great place to be, a lot of people like to get the sympathy, which is why they like to do this. Now, the other side of this coin is that if I'm a victim, if I'm having a bad day and I'm actually looking for sympathy, I will attract other people who want to feel sorry for me. But the problem with this sort of behaviour is it tends to attract other people who are not doing really well in life because they like to talk about their problems as well. And when we think about this below the line behaviour in business, what it does is it causes waste. We're talking about waste of time, waste of money, waste of effort, because anything that happens down here is really just excuses for why we're not getting forward in our business. What we end up doing is we end up becoming paralysed in problems. You know, so we're really going to be wary about this kind of behaviour, especially when we run our own business. If you do this in a job, you're not going to last very long because you get paid based on doing something. In your own business, you can be your own sort of worst enemy when you think about it. And when we have two victims that get together, we end up having what's called a pity party. And a pity party is where people just compare notes on how bad they've got it. And the problem with this is the person who's the biggest loser is the biggest winner. So we have these discussions, we talk about things and why they aren't successful, but it really doesn't do anything other than immobilize us. As a business owner, we need to switch. We need to switch to above the line behavior. And it starts right up the top here. We're taking ownership of our situation. I don't care if you're making money or if you're not making money, if your business just started, or if your business is about to go broke. You need to own the situation, because when you own the situation, you actually have control over what's going on. So when we talk about moving from chaos to control, this is about taking control. This is about chaos. The second thing we need to do is this one. We need to be accountable. Now, what does accountable mean? Well, often people will say accountable means being responsible. And I'll put that up there as well. Because they're two words that we need to actually take on board to be successful in business. So if we look at the word accountable and the difference between accountable and responsible, it's pretty simple. This word accountable has the word count in the middle of it. And that's why we call them accountants, because they count money. You need to be accountable in your business, and the only way to be accountable in your business is to have numbers. Because numbers tell us what's actually going on rather than what we think or don't think is going on. So being accountable in business is about having reports on a regular basis, about knowing the numbers, and about holding yourself accountable to those numbers. Let's talk a bit about responsible. What does responsible mean? Well, it's our ability to respond, being response-able. See, when we talk about the buck stops with me, I'm the boss, everything comes my way, what we're really doing is just blaming ourselves. See, if you don't act on activity, if you don't do something about it, our response, you end up being stuck. So the distinction's pretty simple here, right? The victim mentality below the line, the victor mentality above the line. You want to go into business, you want to be successful, you need to play this game of business above the line as often as you possibly can. You need to be up there all the time, and you need to be catching yourself out. If you're dropping below the line, you need to do the same with your team members, and you'll start to see success.